So I'm sure y'all have heard the news by now, but if you haven't, yesterday we learned that Akira Toriyama passed away recently, and it hit me pretty hard. I was about to start playing FF7 Rebirth again, and I saw the news on the timeline. I stopped everything, got in bed, and read the first 6 volumes of Dragon Ball, like right then and there. But I really just wanted to come on here and reminisce over how much of an impact Akira Toriyama left on me and the people that influenced me as well too. He's literally everywhere in pop culture. Like, if you've been on Twitter, everyone's been pointing out all the mangaka he's influenced and everything that he's had his hand in. Obviously, there's Sonic. We wouldn't have Super Sonic. We wouldn't have Shadow the Hedgehog. And just that alone, think about that. If we didn't have Sonic, imagine how many people would not be making YouTube videos, how many people would not be into games, animation, entertainment, and like anything at all. There's so many artists that I know, myself included, that started out drawing by just sketching Sonic and Dragon Ball characters. And that's it. That's how they started art. Imagine how many people you would not know if Sonic and Dragon Ball just did not exist. And as a black person that grew up in the South, I wouldn't have like 2/3 of the friends I have today if it weren't for Sonic or Dragon Ball. The first time I really got into Dragon Ball was similar to the first time I got into fighting games, which was at my cousin's houses. We went and played through the Budokai series, obviously, the Legacy of Goku games on the Game Boy. My cousin let me borrow those. And I actually saw them and I was like, wait, this is stealing from Super Sonic and Sonic the Hedgehog. And that's when I realized how big this dude's impact, oh my god, my voice, how big this dude's impact was, like, all over the place. Because I was a kid, obviously didn't have the scope or the span to understand how far his impact reached. So I was like, this is just Super Sonic, when it was really the other way around. And my cousin was like, nah, bro, like, you didn't watch Dragon Ball? And I'm like, no, I'm 5. I don't know what Dragon Ball is outside of this game. This game looks tight, though. And so he was like, you know, all this stuff telling me everything, and it sounded really cool. So I went home, and I asked my mom, can I get Dragon Ball? And she was like, let's go to the library. And so we went to the library, and this is, like, the first time I actually ever went to the library. My mom got me a library card. I was like, all right, let's go find you this Dragon Ball. Go ask the person at the front for Dragon Ball and see what they tell you. And the person was like, you want Z, Dragon Ball, or do you want GT? And I'm like, huh? We out here spelling the alphabet. What is this? I don't know what any of that is. And I said, I just want Dragon Ball. And so they pointed me towards where that was. And I saw like most of the volumes, like the first version of Dragon Ball. And I went and picked it up and I was like, yo, this does not look like what I was playing, but let me get into this. And so that started really a trend of me going to the library. I would get like a volume of Magic Treehouse and I would get a volume of Dragon Ball, and I would just alternate between those two. And that really like developed my love of learning, because I really just loved going to the library after that, because I would find something new and I would also get a new version of new volume of Dragon Ball. And so I feel like that was a really, you know, big thing for me. Was my love of reading came from wanting to learn more about Dragon Ball. And I honestly think it's funny how much Pokemon correlates with Dragon Ball for me, because it was around that time where like Pokemon was just starting to wane off in the 90s popularity, because it was the mid 2000s, and Dragon Ball was also the same, because there wasn't a new series at that point until Super, outside of the movies. So everyone in my age group, which was like around 7 or 8 years old, was playing like Pokemon Diamond and watching like reruns of Dragon Ball Z Kai, I think, at that point. And I was over here reading the original and playing like Pokemon Gold and Silver, because my cousin gave me his old stuff. And so I'm over here like, oh, y'all playing this new stuff, but look at this old stuff. Look at this old Dragon Ball. Y'all looking at this new Dragon Ball Z Kai or whatever. And so that let me really connect with a lot of different people, because I was telling them old stuff that was new to them, and they were telling me new stuff that I was watching with them at the same time, if that makes sense. It's kind of weird, but it really helped me connect with a lot of different people, because I was able to give them a lot of information that they didn't have. Especially as a black person growing up in the South, Dragon Ball is super important. We were like sketching everything, like Super Saiyan God 347, whatever we saw on the internet when we went home. We were sketching like Dragon Ball, Super Sonic, all this different stuff. If you're a black person or a Latinx person from the South, you know how important Dragon Ball is to us. Like, there's so many people I approach just off Dragon Ball alone that I still am friends with to this day. So I think around 2009 was when I actually caught up to the original Dragon Ball, and I was like watching episodes of Dragon Ball Z I could find online, like on YouTube and stuff like that, in multiple parts. But Dragon Ball Z Kai started airing in like 2009, and I was tired of waiting, so I started actually going online on YouTube and like these random sites to actually watch the original one in full. And there was a site, if you know, you know, Dragon Ball Z TV, where I was watching the entirety of the original Dragon Ball and Z through like my iPod Touch through some dongle. Like it was the original iPod Touch, so there was a dongle to like composite cable that I was using to like connect it to my CRT TV. And I was just watching the whole thing through that. It was so bootleg, but it was so much fun. And around that time too, I actually really got into like full JRPGs at that time. Yeah, 2009. I would have just finished Final Fantasy VII a few years before that. And then I went into Chrono Trigger immediately after that because I saw Akira Toriyama's art style. And then from there, it was just everything. Like, I had a PSP at that time, so I hacked it and I put every Final Fantasy on there. I put like the first few Dragon Quest games on there, and I just went crazy. I finished Dragon Quest V around that time. I finished Final Fantasy in order at that time too, Dissidia. But I really got into JRPGs because of Akira Toriyama through that moment right there. And I don't think I've ever really talked about that on this channel or like on Twitter or anything, but that's how I got into JRPGs, and that's why you're watching this video now. That's why this channel exists. That's why I got into music. That's why I picked up an instrument for the first time. That's why I have all the friends I have now. That's why I started running in the first place. Like, oh my god, I never talked about this. I'm getting kind of choked up, bro. I actually started running track in part because like when I was younger, I loved running just because, I don't know, it felt really like freeing and like it really kept my mind off of things. So I love running with my dad. And a big part of why I love running was because I felt like the characters that I was playing as in these video games and these stories I was reading. And two of those big characters that I thought of when I ran, like I envisioned and embodied them, was like Sonic, obviously, and Goku. And even up until high school and to this day, honestly, when I still run, I do long distance running, I still like envision myself as Goku and Sonic. And I remember specifically in track meets, I actually bonded with my friends over Dragon Ball, and we would like, oh my god, I remember this. We would like actually, we would like make up, I don't know if it was like fantasy, we was like literally some fantasy stuff, but we would be in there and like, we would be doing spirit bombs in the bleachers and stuff for each other. And we would like, while we were training, pretend we were like Goku and Krillin and stuff like that. And we were like, man, we need a hyperbolic time chamber. Oh my god, bro, I'm just remembering all this stuff. But yeah, like being able to bond over people with real life training and like actual sports over an anime is, you know how crazy that sounds now, how lame that sounds now, but how like vital and pivotal that is. Like no one else is doing it like that. You can't do that with anything else. Oh, but man, let me stop rambling for a little bit. My last memory that I really have was the best theater experience I've had. Dragon Ball Super Broly, when that movie dropped. I hadn't really watched Super. I kind of fell off of Dragon Ball, like as a whole thing, as a franchise, I guess, at that point. But Dragon Ball Super Broly, I went to go see that in theaters. It was the end of winter, the start of spring, so like literally about this time of year in 2019. I was having a rough time. I just moved to where I live now, and I just went to the theater alone, and this black dude comes up to me and he sits next to me. He's like, yo man, what's up? And I'm like, hey. He daps me up, starts talking to me like he's an old childhood friend about Dragon Ball. He's like, hey man, how you feel about, you know, blah blah blah. I'm like, I haven't watched Dragon Ball in a while, but I love this. He's like, man, I love this scene too. Oh my god, like bro. And when I'm like, yeah, and we're just back and forth, all this stuff. The movie starts, and I never do this, but we talked through the whole movie and started screaming and shouting. We're like, yo, that frame was from Dragon Ball Fighters. Oh my god, is that bro? Oh, they just fused. Oh my, just yelling all this stuff. It sounded crazy, and we're just over here screaming and yelling and all this stuff through the movie. We get out the movie. I dap him up. I'm like, bro, thank you, bro. I needed this. Like, honestly, I almost started tearing up. He said, hey man, don't worry about it. You know, be easy. All this stuff. Walked out into the sunset. I never saw this dude again. Never learned his name. But to this day, I don't know. I thought he was like an angel or something. I don't know. It was crazy, but that was the craziest like theater experience I've had, and I don't think we're ever getting anything like that again. But Dragon Ball has just always been there for me, point blank period. I just wanted to come on here and ramble. I don't really care if it's like you know, not unorganized or anything. I usually do pretty scripted stuff, but I just wanted to come on here and just talk. I don't know if it made any sense. But yeah, thanks for watching this far. If you did, I know it was a bit rambly. And feel free to share your memories of Akira Toriyama's work.